McIntyre here. Thank you for joining. I owe you guys the April 19, get this out of my mouth, the April 19 summary of the trial of Lori Vallow. And I am on my way to Lakeland, but have no worries. I am not going to be looking at the camera. I have already summarized all the information and I've done it so that I can talk to you guys about it. Yesterday was my birthday, and I would have wanted to give you this summary late last night, but I had church, and after church, my little tribe planned a little celebration for me, and it was lovely. It actually was very, very welcome because I was feeling pretty sad. As you guys know, I lost my husband in September of 2021. I'm still dealing with it. I'm doing much, much better, but on special occasions, and yesterday was one of those days. I miss my husband. I miss him terribly. Um, but without further ado, let me give you the summary of what took place um, yesterday on April 19 in the trial. And I will tell you guys what I've heard it's happening today. It's going to be really, really cool. As you guys know, I've been talking to you about my perception of the witness statements of people like Melanie Gibb and Zulema Pastenes. And I've told you that what I noticed is a very, very specific trend of it's not my fault, I was manipulated, it's not my fault, it's Lori and Chad Daybell's fault. And I feel really, really strongly that these people are all acting or coming across as very arrogant. And it's kind of sad because I think that there's absolutely no acknowledgement whatsoever that they didn't do their due diligence. They didn't check and make sure that what they were being taught made sense. They just believed these people blindly. And I think one of the reasons they believed them blindly is because they were hearing what their itching ears wanted to hear. I told you that there's a scripture in Second Timothy that says that in the last days people will gather around them teachers that will say what their itching ears want to hear. And I think that's exactly what they were hearing. They were hearing that they were special. They were hearing that in a prior lives they had been either the apostle or very close to the apostle or angels, and that they were vital for this summoning of the 144,000. So they knew how to appeal to people's ego. And if you had an above average ego, you fell right into it if you were not careful. I'm going to tell you something. I think that a great way to measure whether someone is trying to recruit you to a cult or not is whether the superstar is God or Jesus. When the superstar is God or Jesus, you're safe. When the superstar or God is somebody else, like in this case, Lori and Chad, the translated gods and the goddess and the one that's going to lead the 144,000, now you know there's something strange. God's pretty simple, down to earth. I mean, he's complex, but simple at the same time. He makes the gospel simple for us. And that is, do not make any gods out of anything created on earth or under the earth. And what they were doing with Chad and Lori was elevating to a position that they did not deserve. All right, I'm going to get off my pastor's soapbox and let me just go into what happened. The first thing I want to talk about is the 404B uh, trial content, because the defense has been very, very adamant, and as a matter of fact, they have done very, very little cross-examinations of the witnesses, that there were six witnesses, and I think we've had altogether like anywhere between 14 to 16 witnesses altogether since the trial started. Yesterday was day number 12. But those witnesses yesterday was mostly focused on the murder of Charles Vallow in Arizona. And the position of the defense has been that what happened in Arizona should not make it into this trial, because Lori Vallow has not yet been charged with the death of Charles Vallow or the conspiracy to commit murder of Charles Vallow. And that being the case, they believe this information is prejudicial and it's going to turn the jury against Lori. No kidding, right? And the Judge Boyce, who, by the way, has been driving me crazy throughout the last 3 years, because he's held a lot of audiences like behind closed doors that nobody has had an opportunity to find out what was being decided. But now we're getting a pretty darn good idea of what's happening, because what what he said over and over again. Every time one of those witnesses goes up, the defense says, I want to reiterate my disagreement that this evidence is being allowed according to 404 Idaho law. And the judge keeps saying, I have already ruled on this. Well, we've never seen him rule on it, right? So it's got to be one of those ultra secret audiences that he held that, frankly, if he was deciding on 404B, there was absolutely no need for those hearings to be confidential. Absolutely no need whatsoever. But he held them. And at least right now, he's standing firm and he's telling the defense, yeah, you can object what you want. And I have already told the jury that they cannot use as evidence that she is guilty of the plot to commit murder in this particular case, but she can use that evidence that I am allowing as a way to picture her conspiring, picture her forming mens rea, a criminal mind, and understanding and grouping people and managing a scenario that was very similar. Opportunity, right? The opportunity. And really, if the death of Charles Vallow is not a pretty darn good indication of what she's capable of, while sounding amicable and like nothing happened here, there's nothing to see. If this doesn't prove it, then I don't know what will. I mean, other than the crime itself, right? So again, they're not supposed to use it as proof. They're not supposed to use it as evidence. But basically, they're supposed to say, oh, this is what she's capable of. Oh, hold on, she's been involved in something pretty darn similar to what we're being asked to rule on. So they cannot like say because she is guilty of what happened to Charles Vallow in Arizona, she's guilty here. They cannot extrapolate. That is forbidden by the law. But they can draw conclusions as to her ability to conspire, to her ability to commit a murder, and all that good stuff. And so this is why the defense barely cross-examining any of the witnesses yesterday. There were 6 witnesses yesterday, but they barely cross-examined them because their position was, we are objecting that this should be brought, and they are also trying to prepare the, the record for appeal. They want to be able to appeal. And I think from a defense perspective, it makes perfect sense. They want to be consistent. If they don't believe the evidence should have been included at all, then it makes sense that they're like, well, we're not cross-examining because we don't think this evidence belongs to the trial at all. And so that's kind of their position. And so all 6 witnesses basically testify, with the exception of the last one, testify as to the recreation of the crime. Several things. Number one, contrary to what Charles Vallow indicated in his call to 911, they waited at least an hour after the incident to call 911. They wanted to make sure Charles Vallow was dead. They did not want him to be saved. So they called at least 1 hour. Number two, there were no resuscitation attempts. Charles Vallow was given instructions by the 911 operator to provide life-saving techniques, and they said, the medical technician said, based on what I observed, there were no creases, there were no damage, superficial damage to the ribs or anything like that to indicate that any resuscitation attempts were tried. In addition to that, the medical personnel that did attempt to resuscitate him got blood in their hands, right? Because he had been shot twice. There was 0 blood on Alex Cox. So that tells you that he did not try. The detective that interviewed Lori and Tylee said that there was 0 to no emotion. And, I've seen the interviews. I don't know if you've seen the interviews. Look them up. As you know, this is just supposed to be a summary to save you time. It is not meant to be an exhaustive, video recording of there's plenty of channels that do that. But if you're interested in staying abreast of what's happening in half or a third of the time, then this is definitely the channel and the videos for you. And so what she's saying is that she tried very hard, the detective, not to engage in an in-depth conversation with Lori in the car because she had both Lori and Tylee in the car. And when you want to interrogate people, you rather not have them compare notes. And so you separate them. And so there was absolutely not, she did not want to talk. But luckily for her, although Lori had a lot of talking to do, none of it had to do with the fact that her husband has just died. You've seen the videos. If you haven't seen, I recommend that you go to East Idaho News and you watch the video, or Court TV, where she's casually talking to the detectives. It's like, oh yeah, we just moved here. By the way, they had lived in that house only 3 weeks, and Charles had paid for the house so that she would get a new start with JJ. And she also in that interview, like, yeah, because it was all about JJ, never Tylee, just JJ. Like, even trying to dig it to the dead guy, like, you just killed the guy, right? And we know, based on the emails read by the police 2 days ago, we know that the one that was being unfaithful to Charles with Chadebel was Lori, and not the way around, right? But she would place on people the guilt of what she was doing, right? So at any rate, Lori is just a chatterbox. She's like, oh yeah, we just moved here. And then she adds, hi neighbors, like laughing, like sorry but not sorry, with a smile. Just really, really awkward information, like if nothing had happened, like if nothing had happened. And you know, basically the version of events is that Charles was there to pick up JC to take him to school. Yeah, JC, not JC. JC's my son. JJ, to take him to school. And when he went in there, nobody knows how, Lori got hold of his cell phone and supposedly found evidence that he was being unfaithful. Well, guess what? The Idaho Police Department of both Chandler and Redbox and the FBI, they have come through records upon records upon records of cell phones and emails. And guess who's the only person they have found tangible evidence that was being unfaithful was? Lori. There's been a zero shred of evidence that can substantiate that Charles Vallow was being unfaithful to her. But supposedly, the story goes that she gets hold of his phone. He gets really angry because she's found in evidence that he's been unfaithful, which frankly, at this point, it makes no sense that she would be interested, because at this point, in spite of him begging her, she's decided that she's going to divorce him no matter what. So why would you care, right? But apparently, he gets really angry. She doesn't want to give him back his phone, which also is like pretty infantile, if you ask me. He starts getting angry. Tylee goes into her room, gets a bat. I guess she's going to hit her dad because he wants his phone from her mom that he's divorcing. Doesn't the guy have a right to his phone? I mean, I'm not suggesting that he has a right to hurt her, but the story does not make sense. So apparently Tylee goes to her room, gets the bat. Charles apparently is not going to allow Tylee to hit him with the bat, so he takes the bat away from her, and that is when supposedly he hits Alex Cox with the bat. But the funny thing is, Charles Vallow is a professional baseball player, or at the very least, a mini league baseball player. So the question is, if he was, and he's used to using a bat, how is it possible that he barely had an impact on Alex? And also, if he hit Alex on the back, and it was really, really hard, how did Alex manage to get up, go to a room where there was a gun? Oh, also remember, Alex did not live there. Coincidentally, Lori asked Alex to stay the night because supposedly, because Charles Vallow was coming the next day to take JJ to school, and she was afraid for her safety. The thing is, there is zero shred of evidence that Charles Vallow was ever a violent man. So there's really no shred of evidence. What there is plenty of evidence, though, is that the days right before he was lured into that house, Charles was telling Lori and Sade Bell, I got you guys. I know what you're doing. I have the evidence. Lori, you wrote an email to Shad pretending to be me, inviting him to our home only so that he can take time away. And remember, Charles was already communicating with Tammy Daybell, had written her an email, and he was telling them, I am going to talk to Tammy. You have to be uncovered. What you're doing is evil. What you're doing is apostasy. I can't believe you're doing this. I have never been unfaithful to you. You're being unfaithful to me. Someone needs to stop you guys because what you're doing is not right. And it is at that moment that he gets lured into into the home. And Alex is there because at this point, although they have rebuked or delivered him from Ned, now apparently there's another dark spirit called Hiplas. But they're not going to trust it to the casting sessions anymore. They have to take matters into their own hands. And they, as Sade Bell said when he discovered that the insurance company had not been given to Lori, that Lori was no longer the beneficiary, they needed to make sure he was delivered. So they had to put 2 shotguns on his chest. How absolutely ridiculous is that? How absolutely ridiculous is that? You know what's really also super, super sad is that when you look at the interviews with Lori and also with Tylee backs up her mom 100%. If only she had known she was going to be one of the next victims. If only she had known. It's like heartbreaking to see her in that interview justifying her mom's behavior when in reality she was going to be one of the next victims. It's unbelievable. And they are, you can see them, they're casual, they're relaxed. This is exactly what the detective observes, and this is what any of you, if you pull the interviews that are out there, can see that when the police was interrogating, they were both casual, they were both relaxed. It's also pretty scary because it shows the power of Lori and how she had brainwashed Tylee to agree with all the nonsense that was going on. Now, I told you that the defense was very limited in how much cross-examination they were doing, but they did cross-examine this detective. And basically, Archibald just asked her, is there any particular way that someone that's grieving is supposed to act? Grieving my butt? She was not grieving. Listen, I'm grieving for my husband. And he died in September of 2021, and it's still raw and painful. I have better moments, and the lapses in between crisis and crying spells has now, it's growing larger and larger. But I cannot, like, that's what I see in those interviews is not grief. Is someone that knew exactly what she was doing. Is someone that knew what was going to happen, and is someone that is calm because basically she knows that everything happened as they had planned it. There's absolutely no grief there whatsoever. And yes, I know I'm a coach and I'm a pastor, and I know that grief takes different shapes, different forms. And I remember when John first died, I had so much strength, so much stamina, because I was trying so hard to prove to my kids that I could handle it, and to the church. And I mean, I would tell them that I was sad and whatever, but I remember even some people asking based on my strength, they were like, you seem to be okay. I'm like, no, I'm not. I would correct them real fast. I'm like, no, I'm not. Like, I'm trying, but I am not okay. And even that stamina, which was still very intermittent, it completely left me after the live celebration. I broke down. And guys, for the next months, I remember I would drop JC at school at 8 a.m. I would come home. I would set my alarm for 3 p.m. And I would put the covers over my head and I would sob my eyes out until that alarm rang again. Now, I'm not suggesting that every person has to grieve exactly the same. I'm just using this as an example to say, grieve my butt. I don't see any grief there. Now, the last witness Her name is April, and she was a friend of Lori Vallow in Hawaii. And the reason she is important is because prior to 2018, when Lori lived in Hawaii before, she and her worked together with kids 12 years and under. And she knows the Lori before all this big mess of prepare people. And she says that Lori started changing in 2018. She started talking about some beliefs that seemed a little radical, but she goes, it went full blown in 2019. She got into town. She told her that she and Kylie needed a place to stay. She told her she was getting divorced from Charles Vallow. And she told her that she was a goddess. And she told her about the scale of dark and light. And she basically tried to recruit her. And she tried. And then Melanie Gibb came and also tried. And, you know, what she says is that she felt like she was being, what's the word? What's the word I'm looking for? Groomed. Like she was being groomed. And basically, Lori was inviting her. Lori literally told her, I am a translated goddess, and I have been sent to groom the 144,000, and you are one of them, and I am here to recruit you, basically. And then Melanie Gibb came and tried to do the same. I mean, they were convinced, and Melanie Gibb was convinced that this is what it was all about. And so, you know, April told her, in no uncertain terms, I am not interested. I am not interested. And it's interesting because it is reported that during the testimony, Lori was looking at her, but April did not look at her, not once. She said on the stand that this has changed her life. Because she says that when she was dealing with Lori, Lori said at some point that it was Charles to take care of JJ and to figure out how hard it was to take care of him. But when she said that she was done, because those are her words, that she was done with JJ, in the context of that conversation, she thought that what Lori was saying is, I'm done taking care of him. It is Charles' turn. And you know, it reminded me of the conversation that they played, not yesterday, but the day before yesterday, when Kobe Bryant was in the stand, where he says, Mom, JJ was the sweetest little boy. Why would you do this to him? And he goes, I could have helped you. And Lori says, that's what everybody says now. And he said, when did you give me the opportunity to offer? When did you tell me that you needed help? If you had told me, I would have helped you. And I guarantee you, it's the same way that all the people that love JJ felt. But you know, in reality, she needed JJ gone and Tylee gone, because their death advanced their narrative that people around them were getting dark, and that the only way to deliver them was by killing their bodies so that their spirits would be relieved. It's just really, really crazy. You know, another interesting thing with this April lady, is that she has given some interviews to Idaho News. And as you guys, I don't know if you guys are probably not noticing, because you're relying on me for me to tell you about what's happening in the trial. Every time a witness comes, the judge asks them, or the bailiff asks them, whether they've been looking at the TV, because they're supposed to not do that right before they testify. They can do it after they're released as witnesses, but they're not supposed to do it prior to. And so today or yesterday, when this happened, they asked her, and she says that somebody had sent her an interview from a Fox News affiliate, and she had read it real quick and had read a couple of comments, and the defense tried to use that as to say she needed to be disqualified, but the judge disagreed. The judge didn't think that the nature of the interview and the fact that she read some opinions, he did not think that that was going to have a negative impact in her testimony. And of course, the defense did not want her to testify, because think about this. The defense is working really hard at establishing that Lori is a victim, that she was a regular person until she met Chad, and that this was all her doing. And this was not her doing. She was just manipulated into doing it, right? But this lady, April, she's openly testifying, no, Lori was very much recruiting me. Both Lori and Melanie Gibson. And I told you this is why it bothers me when I hear Melanie Gibb, because it's like she's trying to disassociate herself from any type of responsibility. Like she was at the margin of things, you know. So yeah. So that's kind of like, well, the judge decided that it wasn't enough to disqualify her, and she testified, and I just told you what she testified. So what's happening today? What's happening today? Number one, there's a lot of rumors about a potential plea agreement for Chad Daybell. And I think that the only way he would get a plea deal, because he separated his case from Lori. So the death penalty is off the table for Lori, but it's not off the table for him because he's not exercising his right to a speedy trial. So the death penalty is still very much on the table for him. So if he knows what's good for him, and Chad attorney is watching, he's there every day watching the trial. If he's smart, he's telling Chad, please, please, Chad, please. Listen, Chad Daybell wanted the cases severe, divided from each other. So if he knows what's good for him, he can still make a plea and he can not get the penalty and he can testify Lori. That really would be the only situation under which he would be entitled to be a witness, because he is a co-conspirator. So unless he gets a plea agreement and one of the conditions is that he testifies against Lori, he has no need to be a witness because he has a constitutional right not to self-incriminate. Another thing that makes me really, really curious is Melanie Boudreau or Melanie Polanski. Guys, the policeman, I mean, there's just so much stuff in her case. What she did with the clothes of her own children. Um, oh my gosh, I forgot to tell you that when Chad and Lori were looking for a home in Hawaii, one of the witnesses testified from the police department that they found an email that they presented to the person that was going to either rent them or sell them a home, where he said, we are a clean couple with no pets and no children. But we know that Lori had 2 children, right? But remember, by then, they were already dead and buried in Chad Daybell's property. So she could openly say, no kids, we have no kids. And they say that the Wi-Fi password in Redsburg, when they were forming their compound of believers of the 144,000, the password was too many kids. And that when Alex sent that password to Lori, Lori said, funny. And it would be if it wasn't because now we know what happened to her 2 poor babies. But going back to the Melanie Boudreau guys, they are not letting us know who is testifying. And so we don't know if they are going to call her. But I think the only way that lady avoids some sort of criminal prosecution is by testifying against her aunt. And I sure hope the police is doing a good job. Now, if she does come and testify, brace yourselves because she is another arrogant person. There's just so much arrogance in these people. So much arrogance. There's like no humility, no serious expressed regret. And they could have saved lives if they would have had the courage. I have zero respect for Melanie Gibb. The only reason she decided to testify against them is because her skin was on the line. If that had not been the case, she probably would not be testifying. And so I'm sorry. I'm glad that she's testifying, but I do question her motivations. And I'm going to stop here because I don't want to do that anymore. And besides, this video is getting too long. But there were 6 witnesses. So I had a lot to share because I had done a lot of research and I wanted to bring you guys up to speed. So again, I'm Pastor and Coach Gene McIntyre, former practicing attorney in my country of national origin, emotional intelligence, life and executive coach, trainer, human resources professional, And I am so happy to be able to be doing this for you because besides all those accolades, I am a mother and I am a wife, even though my husband is no longer here, but he's in heaven, but I'm still a wife. And also, I'm a proud follower of God. And so when you hear my summaries, you're going to see some trickles of that. But I'm so happy that I get to do this, and I'm so happy that some of you are finding it useful. And I intend to continue doing this because I'm following the trial anyway. So I might as well uh, share with you guys in the process. Um, don't forget that there's a link to the playlist where all of these things are. I will need to be like no longer driving to put the playlist, but I will put it in the description, and I will come back tomorrow after I have researched everything that happened today. I just give you a little appetizer, and that is that David, Melanie Gibb, then fiance and now husband, is on the stand, and he is being grilled as he should by the defense through cross-examination. You want to know more? Wait for the next video. First thing tomorrow morning. I love you guys. It's Pastor and Coach Jenny McIntyre. Talk to you soon. Bye.